joy to see you, Pastor Ayo, as my
Thank
co-host.
you,
And we have the privilege to have Pastor Joseph Takon in the house.
Takon,
Joseph Takon. Thank you. Before I add an M to your name, Pastor Joe Takon in the house. Pastor Joe Takon is the senior lead pastor for RCCG, the Redeemed Christian Church of God, City of David, Atlanta. And I will just ask him to, share a bit about his journey with us. He was also a missionary for a couple of years in Haiti. And so he has experienced it all, on both sides. And one of the reasons why I really wanted him to share with us is because I had watched his transition with the online church ministry. And I've really been encouraged by watching just how he has transitioned into the online ministry, and the result is getting. And I know that I've talked to a couple of pastors, and I know that there is some struggling going on. And in addition to that, you have some tired, like weariness and just the self-care part of it. So we are going to be asking Pastor Joe a couple of questions, and then we will see what we will be able to learn and use for ministry. So Pastor Joe, you are welcome again. So can you tell us just a little more about your background in ministry?
Well, so that we don't take out of the time that is slated for this program this morning, I joined the Redeemed Christian Church of God in 1993, but before then I've been Christian student leader back in Ife. I was president of the fellowship, having held different positions. President of the Evangelical Christian Union. I was national secretary for NIFES, and I have been joined the Redeemed. I transited from Foursquare to Redeemed, and of course, like everybody else, you start as a worker. We pioneered what is Victory Parish today, where Ayo Adeshola is pastoring in. Then after that, I went to Ojodo to pioneer Faith Chapel, which is now Faith City, where Pastor Diola Mensah and then Pastor Bola Shokoya now is there. And then from there, I went to Haiti and Haiti to Atlanta, and I've been in Atlanta for the past 20 years. That's my story.
Wonderful. Thank you. Pastor Ayo Daniels, do you have any questions for him?
Yes.
On what he has shared so far.
Okay, since this is Clergy Care, the first question I'd like to ask today, how are you able to, because I know you're a medical doctor, how are you able to maintain your wellness with ministry responsibility? And I think a whole lot of ministers need to understand that ministry life balance. That's my first question for you today, sir.
Number one, I appreciate the fact that I am first a Christian, but I also appreciate the fact that I'm also a physician. For me, those are two very important positions, and my training as a physician has been very, very helpful in my understanding and application of ministry, and vice versa. There are some people who belittle science and belittle medicine. But I like looking at Malachi chapter 4, verse 2, where it says, "Unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings." Every normal bird has two wings. So on one wing is a wing of ministry or faith, scriptures and all that, and the other wing is a wing of science and medicine and the application of medicine. Both wings coming together enhances the wellness of the person. So for me, as a Christian, understanding biblical concepts of stability, of diligence, and of being relevant to God in terms of my discipleship, my deliberate discipleship work with God. And as a physician, understanding that just the common things that medicine teaches, how to take care of yourself, how you need to rest, how to monitor your blood pressure, how when you get to a particular age bracket, you need to monitor your sugar, you need to monitor a lot of other things and see a physician as normally as possible. For me, those two things, I apply them in my own life. And when I talk to people, I tell them to not discountenance them by any means. perhaps I did not add that I run a radio talk show program in Nigeria right now on Inspiration FM every Wednesday, between 8 p.m. and 8:30. So as a Christian, I bring my Christian faith into the application of medicine. And of course, I insist that people should not disregard medicine because they are Christians. Having said that, there's something that caught my attention recently, which was said by a very prominent man of God, where he says that the coronavirus has become anti-church virus. I took exception to that because I said we cannot, as Christians, begin to create the impression that the efforts of science is antithetical to the work of ministry. How can you say that COVID-19 has become anti-church virus simply because the leadership, either the government leadership or the health leaders, are trying to say that please be careful how you live your life, be careful how you maintain social distancing and all that, and then you suddenly go out on a limb and say that COVID-19 has become anti-church virus. I don't think that is good education. I don't think that is healthy teaching and wholesome teaching for those of us who are Christian leaders. We have got to make our people understand that things that are medical are very serious. I mean, COVID-19, for instance, is a very serious thing. Lives are being lost every single day. But want to just wave his hand and create the impression that, oh, it does not matter, disregard it and just depend on faith and get your healing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure you know that I believe in that. I pray for the healing of people. But to disregard something as serious as this pandemic by Christian leaders, for me, it's a huge mistake. I don't know if I've answered the question rightly, because I touched a lot of it.
Well, I'm about to come at you again.
Go ahead.
Because I love what you said earlier on, that every good bird, and it just gave me a sense of deep thinking now, has two wings, which speaks of balance.
Yes.
I know when it comes to our faith, people have asked this question, or rather,
sorry, I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Well, yes.
It's frozen.
It seems to be frozen. So while he's trying to correct that, let me just throw in something to you. You talked about the need for us to move with the season, and that just made me to think about how God uses seasons, and for us not to get stuck, and the fact that this might actually be God's way of moving us out of our comfort zone and helping us to see a more global ministry. So based on that, I want to say, what do you see? How did you face this challenge of transitioning into online church?
Okay, I'll answer that, but another Pastor Ayo is back. Let's hear his question so that I can answer both together.
Okay, so Pastor Ayo, you froze, so I had to kind of ask the question. So you are back. Can you finish your question? Is it still frozen?
You're muted. We can't hear you. You're muted. We see your lips moving, but we can't hear you.
Okay. I think I've gotten it. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes.
I said that the church is the ground and the pillar of truth, which means we dispense knowledge.
Yes.
I was just asking that, and I know that who have mixed over the years. I'm always curious when I meet medical people. I like to see it from their perspective. Is there any conflict between medicine and our faith?
No, there's none. There's none.
Okay.
There's absolutely none. You see, I did a series in my, well, not a series. I just was talking to the church and I reminded them, I said, they should not forget that in America, for instance, all the Ivy League colleges, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, and all of that, they were set up by Christian leaders. These were institutions that were set up by Christian missionaries. So there's absolutely no conflict between intellectual advancement, intellectual development, scientific expansion, and our faith. Because as it were, I mean, I'm not a student of that deep history, that part of history, but scholars have told us that a lot of the scientific advancement, the breakthroughs were initiated by Christian.
Yeah.
So there's no conflict at all. There's a balance, and I think that there's actually a union. I think that when people are just being overzealous and they are trying to show that they are more spiritual than, in my opinion, than sufficiently to create that sufficient balance, that's when they go out on the limb and they create that impression that they are really deeply spiritual And so a deeply spiritual person should not, take care of their health, should not apply common sense and wisdom in managing their health.
So obviously we are saying, because I know that since this is a Clergy Care platform, we're saying that there is nothing wrong for a clergy to access medical facilities whenever they need it.
There is not, in fact, do not even wait until you are sick before you access medical facilities. Like I say, this work, when I was in Lagos, I was working in a private hospital. The first time I went, I met Pastor Odeyemi. They had brought in a doctor, one of the pastors of Redeem, who was a top pastor at that time. That was even before I joined Redeem, in our clinic. And when I reviewed this man, did all the lab work for this man, everything came out normal, but this man was dying. He was obviously very ill. And I had to tell him, it was obvious, I concluded that he was dying from fatigue. I told him a story of a Christian leader who died, Robert McKinney. He died at 28. I said, the man on his sick bed, he said this. He said, God gave me a message and a horse to deliver. The horse was his body. He said, now I have killed the body and I cannot deliver the message. And he died at 28. Angels will welcome him. So there's nothing wrong with a gospel, a pastor, a Christian leader getting medical attention. I will suggest you get it before you become ill. This work is very demanding. So from time to time, go in there and do your regular checkup. I try to see my doctor at least twice a year. I do labs at least 2 times a year, just to make sure that I'm on top of my game. I don't want to die out of ignorance. I don't want to die out of foolishness. My day will come, but I want to make sure that when that day comes, I have lived out my life on earth. That's my answer to that. Let me answer the other question, Pastor Dr. Kuyinu.
I still have a question for you.
Pastor, you are very excited about this particular line of questions.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I still have a question for you. Because I used to think that it's once in a year that you need to check out your health. I'm one of the advocates for medicine, that it doesn't have any conflict with our faith. Advocate for a healthy living, because I have to do God's work, the vessel. So, what will you recommend for clergy? Is it once a year or twice a year to go for their regular checkup? And what do they need to check? I know you mentioned earlier on blood level, sugar level, and all that. What are the other things every clergyman should be able to? Because we are in the business of trying to help other people, forgetting that plus to take care of ourselves.
I will say, once you are more than 40 years of age, once you get to 40 and above, you want to get a blood pressure monitor for yourself. Get one, keep one at home where you monitor your blood pressure. Studies have shown that when a counselor, they take the blood pressure of a counselor before he counsels somebody. They measure his blood pressure after counseling the person, just listening to the person and talking to the person. They take his blood pressure again, the blood pressure goes up, it spikes. So I would suggest one of the things you want to do is that once you pass the age of 40, you want to get a blood pressure monitor and keep at home. You want to do your annual physical at least once a year between age 40 and 50. And one thing you want to do as a Black man, colon cancer is now common in Black people, anytime from age 35 and above. Normally, it used to be way over the age of 40, but now from age 35, we are beginning to see colon cancer very common among Black people. So I would say, once you pass 35, you want to do a colonoscopy. Between 35 and 50, you want to do a colonoscopy. And when you do it, depending on the results, sometimes they'll tell you to come back after 5 years, sometimes they may tell you to come back after 10 years. But you want to keep a blood pressure monitor at home. You want to, once a year, between that age 40 and 50, you want to do a complete physical at least once a year. Once you pass age 50, I would suggest you do it at least twice a year. You do the normal workup, blood sugar, cholesterol, complete panel. You want to check your prostate. You want to check your the normal functions that they do when you do a physical. But you want to check your prostate, and then normally always make sure you check your blood pressure, check your sugar level once you reach between age 45 and above. That keeps you going.
Okay, I will have to step in here, pastors. I know that I think what we will have to do is have Pastor Joe come back, and we will focus on health and wellness, just focusing on that. So that we can get back on track with the online church model. So Pastor Joe, can you go ahead and answer? And
Okay.
I'm going to, because of time, I'm going to say combine two questions, and which will be one is the challenges you faced with the online church. Number two, setting it up. And then what were some of the changes you had to make in order to implement it well?
Okay. The challenges I faced with the online church for us, when we started church, actually, you're telling people to church, come to church. Even though we had an IT and online platform, live streaming that had been on for over 10 years, but we used to encourage people, don't stay at home and watch the service online. Make sure you come to church. Now, it became such a conflict when now it became necessary for us to tell people, don't come to church, go home and watch the service online. So in that first 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it was difficult for us to get people to buy the idea of making sure that they watch the service at home online. It was a bit difficult. It was a huge transition for us. And as a local pastor, all the thoughts that go through your head. Will I have enough people watching the service? How are they going to give? And all of that. Those thoughts go through your head. But those were the major challenges we had. Getting people to stay home and getting them to watch the service and reminding them when it is service time that, hey, it is service time. So we had to initially, I used to make phone calls, robocalls that will go out to the people sometime between 9 and 10. Our services start at 10:30. Between 9 and 10, send out the robocalls. Some of them will pick the call because they'll see my name. They'll pick the call and say hello. You know, some of them will call me back before I go into the sanctuary. When they call me back, I say, listen, service is starting at 10:30. I want you to make sure that you log on. The few people I was able to answer their calls, I will answer their call. But that was one of the major challenges. Now, how did I make the changes? Number one, the first change I had to make had to do with my mental adjustment. Because, you know, as pastors, we think sometimes in silos or in compartments. We think, you know, we index our thinking. This is how things must go. I had to change my mentality and tell myself, it was something that I had to convince myself. And I said, God knew that there was going to be COVID-19. God knew that churches will be watching, will go online. So God wants me to still be an effective leader, an effective disciple, an effective minister. So I had to deal with my mentality. That was one. Number two, I had to make changes to how I manage information. How was I going to manage information? So what did I do? The moment COVID-19 started, the moment it became obvious that we're not going to be having services, one of the things I did was that I sent letters to every member of the church, at least twice a week. Initially, it was twice a week. Then later, I scaled it down to once a week. Why was I doing that? I wanted to give them updates. I wanted to let them know, number one, this is what's going on. It's because of COVID-19. These are the signs and the symptoms. I sent out those letters. Every time I found new updates from the health CDC website, I sent it to the people. What did that do to the people? It made the people know, number one, that, okay, the church leadership is not that ignorant about what is going on. Number two, the church leadership is concerned about their welfare, their well-being, not just about their coming to church. We wanted them to know that we're concerned about their physical well-being. Number three, it also made them know that we were interested about what was going on globally. So I kept myself informed. I listened to the news. I checked what others were doing, what other churches were doing. I wanted to find out what were other churches doing. What kind of messages were other churches preaching? I had to find out. So I would watch other services, watch other programs, listen to other messages they have stored in YouTube to find out what were the kind of messages that they were preaching in this time that were relevant to the people. Because it's not every kind of message you preach at a time like this. I had to find out the message that was relevant to the people. I also had to make myself relevant. For instance, how long does our service run? Before COVID-19, our service used to run for about 2 hours. On first Sunday of the month, it ran for 2.5 hours. And when we started initially, I ran the service first for 2 hours. It was such a drag running a service for 2 hours. It was both boring. After a while, it became boring for me and boring for the few people who were with me in the studio because you are not seeing a crowd. There's nobody to motivate you. So we deliberately calculated and decided to scale down our services to 1.5 hours. So in that 1 hour, we made sure that we did everything on a Sunday morning. And then what did I also do? We added another service on Friday, which we normally were not having. What was that service about? During this period, we know people were scared. People were very afraid. So we wanted them to be praying. So we brought in prayer, and we brought in Holy Communion. We brought in, initially was prayer and Holy Communion, prayer and Holy Communion, prayer and Holy Communion. We used to take Holy Communion once a month, but this time we brought it every single Friday. And I'm sure you know the relevance. There was a pandemic, there was a disease, there was a scare, and we had to preach repeatedly from the book of Exodus that in times like this, when I see the so up until now, we still take communion every Friday. And then what else did I do? After a while, the Friday meeting became a bit redundant because people now knew, after all this prayer and Holy Communion, we now introduce another, what we call a live series conversation. It's actually live series with Pastor Joe LPG, where it's more like a dialogue. I bring in different people and we have conversations on different topics. I've had Pastor Sam Adeyemi, his featured ones. We've done a series on marriage and relationship. We are going to be doing a series on race relations where we are bringing in a Caucasian and African American, and we'll be doing another series on education and all that. So that spiced up the service, the Friday meetings. Because while we are doing that, people are asking questions. They are sending questions on Slido so that we could take the questions in real time. What else did I do? Pastor Toby,
some of the, I think there are some questions that will also help. There are some more questions. And okay. I want to say this also to the audience. I can see some pastors. Pastor Ayodeshola, welcome. It's good to have you in the house. We have a couple of pastors on. I want to say that you mentioned about some of the challenges. I want to ask specifically also, what are some of the challenges you have in managing your workforce? The children, because you've talked about main service, but people, there are other parts of the ministry. You have the children's ministry, the teens ministry, your workers, what have you been able to do to effectively get the best and manage this other para-ministry, these other units in the church? Simple. And your workforce, your workers.
What we did, in times like this, there's so much unpredictability. And one of the things we have come to realize is that even after post-COVID-19, when all the restrictions are lifted, church services will never be the same again. So one of the things that we are actually working on that right now, on how to transition church from what it has always been to what it will be post-COVID-19. But my workforce, what I did was that I've held meetings with them on Zoom. You will not believe that when we held a Zoom meeting, I had more workers attend that meeting than workers attended when we used to have the brick and mortar services and workers meeting. More workers attended the Zoom meeting. Head of ministries, head of department, I've held meetings with them on Zoom. The children ministry, the children have a Zoom service every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Sunday, once we finish our service, the children go on their Zoom platform and they have their own meetings. I've had to hold meetings with the children teachers. I held a meeting with them on the Zoom platform, encouraged them, motivated them, had personal meeting with the head of the children's ministry, one-on-one, encourage him, motivate him, and let him know that, hey, listen, you are now the pastor of your local church. Don't make your church fail. Your church has got to sleep. So that has been encouraging. The other day, we had a children's day. It was a drive-through children's day. Very exciting. They got the children to sing from their various homes, recorded them, did a montage, and it was really, really beautiful. So that's about the children's ministry. The youth ministry, our youth ministry is called Pulse. They meet at 11 o'clock on Zoom platform. So the leaders, I've met with them. The men's fellowship, I meet with them on Zoom platform. The women fellowship, I meet with them on Zoom platform. Going forward, I'll be meeting with the men's fellowship every 2 weeks and the women fellowship once a month because the women fellowship seems to be a lot stronger. And then the head of departments, I meet with the head of departments once in 6 weeks.
Wonderful. And I'm going to come to you soon, Pastor Ayo. There is one more question, but what I can see is almost as if this season is also allowing you to be kind of get more engaged. I don't know, maybe that is what I'm hearing. It's like almost you have to kind of get more in touch with your people than ever before. And so leading to that, but before I ask my question, I also want to tell the pastors out there and those online, please write your questions on the chat. In the next about 10 minutes, we are going to start taking questions. So if you have questions, please start writing it on the chat box. I want to segue into looking at issues of finances. So I'm going to combine two questions again with that, because I know one issue that pastors have struggled with and ministries have struggled with is finances during this season for the church, and also being able to also help those that are financially struggling, especially during this season. So what have you done, or how have you been able to manage, the church finances? Because I also know that, before now, you had just moved into a new big building. And how are you also being able to effectively work with church members that are going through lots of job, lots of house, and all of that as a result of COVID?
Thank you so much, Pastor Toby. I keep calling you Pastor Toby. I know multiple doctor,
I'm also Pastor Toby.
Okay. I know you are Pastor.
So I am, don't worry.
Forum, so let's call it. Yes. Now, this is what I will say. When COVID started, the first thing that I did was fortuitously, deliberately, and then later fortuitously, I studied what Joseph did in Egypt. What he did in Egypt when there was, the pestilence and all of that, and the famine, and what he did. I realized that one of the things he did was that he catered for the people, gave them food. After a while, he gave them seed. Giving them food was not enough. He had to give them seed. And I found out, as I studied through scriptures, I also found out that every time there was a famine, there was a seed. Somebody had to plant. What's his name? Isaac sowed in the land that year, reaped 100-fold. Every time there was a famine, the widow of Zarephath had to give a seed. So one of the things I did, just as COVID started, was that I planted seeds in some churches. I sent money, and Pastor Toby knows Pastor Eniabitobi knows our situation. We moved into a new building, and money has been hard.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did was I just sent money to some churches. Called one pastor. It wasn't that much money. I mean, when you look at it in that sense, but I sent money. One pastor, I sent in 2 installments, and I just sent to some churches. One of the pastors, I was even saying the other day, one of the pastors in my province, I called him, he never picked up my call, never returned the call, so I refused to send the money. But one of the things I did was I sent money to some churches, and that for me was a deliberate seed sowing, sacrificial seed sowing. So what happened to us was that the first Sunday, second Sunday, of course, the offerings, ebbed, the offerings went down. But as the Sundays kept going on, initially, I did not emphasize finance. One of the things I did was I spoke about the need of the people. It was very deliberate, and I told some of the pastors in my province, don't pressure the people to give. I spoke about the need of the people. We announced, for instance, that was the announcement I even made before offerings. If you have a need, if you can't pay your rent, if you lost your job, if you don't have money, please call the church office. We give them a number. Just say, I am loved. Just text, I am loved. We'll follow up with you from there. We'll ask you just basic questions. Whatever your financial need is, we'll give you a check. We'll cut a check for you. We'll ask you to come and collect foodstuff. And for some of the people, I carried the foodstuff myself to them. I dropped it by the driveway. I didn't go to into the house. Dropped it by the driveway. What did that do? It showed the people that we were compassionate. Because some of the millennials, some of these professionals, the question they were asking, we know church is only interested about people's money. What is the church doing? So every time, before I even ask for offering, I spend time talking about the need of the people. We want to meet your need. We want to help you. Guess what that did? Some of them now started sending us text messages. Oh, now we know the church cares. Now we know the church is interested. So when I first announced that and emphasized that, then I will now follow up very softly. You see the need, the huge need that we are dealing with. Please, if you have money to support, go ahead and make your contribution. If you have foodstuff, go ahead and give your foodstuff. But go ahead again and give your offerings. That was just all we did. Initially, we did that repeatedly. And even up until now, that is how we still make the announcement. Some people are still giving, some people have stopped giving, but by the grace of God, the offering has just been stable. But there's something very important again I want to talk about, is the fact that this work is a work of faith. In the process of teaching about or studying about seed in times of famine, seed in times of pestilence, seed in times of pandemic, you will not believe what I did. For 2 meetings, I authoritatively taught about tithe and offering. And I'm going to do it again. But I spoke, I mean, like I said, it was the grace of God, because Pastor Toby knows I don't like talking about money that much. But that anointing was strong on me, and it was audacious. I was bold about it. I stood out there and I told the people, I said, listen, the biblical pattern is there. You've got to plant a seed during times of famine. But the first seed you must plant, for some of you who are delinquent, for some of you who are derelict, is your tithe. I'm talking about that tithe. And it did something good, because some people who were not tithing started tithing. Another thing we did, which was also very deliberate, we created multiple platforms of giving. People used to give through our online. We had to set up Zelle giving. I know you guys don't have Zelle in Nigeria, through the bank. We had to set up SMS giving. And then the one that was for us was most challenging. I did not want to do that. But our members kept saying, Pastor, you've got to do it, was Cash App. You guys don't have Cash App in Nigeria, but we had to do Cash App. And you will not believe, brethren, when we did Cash App, about 1/3 of our offerings come through Cash App.
Wow.
Because guess what? That's what the young people use. My son uses Cash App.
Yes.
They don't do Zelle, they just do Cash App. You know, so you have to be deliberate in creating multiple channels of giving. I know in Nigeria, people are a bit more stilted in their thinking. People are a bit more inflexible in their thinking. But you go out on the limb, create multiple channels of giving. I end by telling you this story. I asked Pastor Sam Adeyemi, we were talking the other day. I asked him, I said, I'm sure, how have you coped? And this is what he told me. He said that long before COVID started, he had transitioned 90% of his church to online giving. That 90% of his church was already giving online before COVID started. So they don't emphasize the paper giving. They mention the paper giving only as a last resort. They will tell the people, these are the various platforms. Then they say, okay, if you can't give on this various platform, there are envelopes for you. What has that done for them? It has saved cut costs, envelope, printing costs and all that. And for me, why we are doing this now is preparing us for post-COVID. Because I said, after COVID, we are going to scrape out envelopes. We'll still encourage the people to give. And what has that also done? Some people who were not giving are now giving. And because people know that when they give through online and the various platforms, you see they are giving. All those very wealthy people who were giving $2 don't give $2 anymore. They give something substantial. Those are the benefits for us.
Praise God, the Lord. Pastor Ayo, let me allow you ask that you have some of your questions that you sent to me. Let me allow you ask one of them that is really hot in your heart now, as you have heard Pastor Joe. I hope he has not, let me see.
I think he has muted again. He has muted.
Yeah, muted again, Pastor Ayo. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. So I quite understand Pastor Joseph. Thank you for your response to those questions. But what I will say first, because I would like our own people here to please type in your questions. Nigeria, as you may know, is still in a very peculiar situation. We have issues with data. We have issues with technology, as it were. And I know quite all right, a whole lot of pastors had a whole lot of difficulty transiting from just facing the crowds and then going online. I will want you to just ask, or rather answer this question. If anyone wants to set an online ministry here in Nigeria, what advice will you give to them? Because majorly, as it were today, it's probably those in the major city like Lagos, Ibadan, and other capital cities that actually have access to data as it were. So what will you advise anyone who wants to set up an online ministry? What will you advise them to do? Pastor Yo, you are muted, please.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. The world has changed, and the world will never be the same again. Let's come to terms with that. I was very disappointed. One of top Nigeria's Christian leader got very angry and went to his church and said that why should Bill Gates say that the world will never be the same again? Truly, the world will never be the same again. Some of the people who are used to coming to church, who have not been coming now during this period, when church opens, they are not likely going to come back to church because they enjoy the online thing and they're going to be watching it online. What I will advise to my advice to every local Nigerian is take as much money as you can put together. If you want to look for specific contributors, or what do they call them? They call them what do they call those people who major
service
contributors,
provider,
or whatever. No, contributors, people who will give money to church. Partners. Take all the money you have and invest in an online platform. Take as much, because that is the direction of the world. Invest in an online platform. Do you know the benefit? I could be here in Atlanta one day, I find your website and I say, you know what, this pastor needs money, and I send money to you. Invest on an online platform. If you are in a place where the people don't have data, this is what I'm going to tell you. Is it possible for you to provide data services for them when they come to church? Invest that money and provide data for them and tell them, hey, if you come to church, while in church, you are going to have data. Your people will like you for it. Initially, you think that you are losing. No, but you are investing into the well-being of the people. And if it is possible, if as a local church, I will say, perhaps you also want to create a cafe in your church environment, because this is a major problem in the community. A cafe where people can come, invest into that, where people can come, stay in the cafe. You give them specific time zone. You say you come in there, you take a number or something, you stay for 1 hour, you log into the computer, you stay for 1 hour. After that 1 hour, your computer shuts down. You guess what that will do? It will drive traffic to your church. It will drive traffic to that cafe. And some of the people who come to that church, because you get their information, you can now enlist these people or recruit these people or follow up these people and have them become your church members. But establishing an online service, an online platform for church, live streaming, and my brother, right now, it is a no-brainer. Any pastor who is wise will invest in that.
And it's almost like this is pushing us to be more creative and to reach out to the new generation, to the millennial. Yeah. Because they are the future. And if we lose them, we are talking about the future of Christianity, the future of our faith. And so they are mostly online. So it's almost like, heavens is pushing us to say, look at where the fish is. Look at where they are. And, you need to learn how to fish in these waters, because that is the waters where you are going to catch this new generation of fishes. Yeah. Praise the Lord. Based on that, I have one last question that I'm going to also pair together. I'm still waiting. Please, as I said, please put your chat messages. We are still waiting for questions. Two things that I think we need to be mindful of. Number one, issues of confidentiality, because sometimes we are used to preaching in our churches, and when we go online, we don't realize that now the world is watching us, and these things are being recorded, and these words can come back. And so, one, when you are sharing things online, being how as pastors to be mindful of people's confidentiality. Number two, the need for more scrutiny and accountability in the information you are sharing online, because just like we said, these people, as they are watching you, they can start typing what you are saying. And I mean, I've been in classes where, as the lecturer is teaching, the students are online checking the information the lecturer is giving right there and then.
They're checking you out right away.
They're checking the information, and they will say, "Excuse me, Dr. So-so-so, I've checked online. That information you said 1,000, but it is actually 200 people. You know, I've been in class and seen that. And so maybe just speaking to that, especially as we go online, and sometimes we are not as accountable to the information we are given as we ought to be.
Yeah, I agree, Pastor Toby. One of the things I want to say is the fact that I think God has created the pandemic. In my opinion, is actually I think it's a pilot. It's a pilot arrangement by God to help us see what we should be doing in the future. Because what this pandemic has done is that even though almost every conceivable sector of the society was shut down, the only thing that's continued to function is the church. Hollywood shut down, Nollywood shut down, airline industry shut down, soccer games shut down, football, everything shut down. But the only thing that continued to function is the church. I think that this is an opportunity to do a pilot performance, a pilot study on how we can carry the gospel to everywhere, carry the gospel to the remotest parts of the world. And by the grace of God, I think that this is one way that the gospel was going to go out. So back to this point on confidentiality, believe you me, this pandemic has made me a better preacher because there are things I don't say anymore in the pulpit, you know, and I am a bit more studious now. I study more so that when I am talking intelligently. And I'm not only talking intelligently, I am talking in a compact manner. Instead of being verbose and, you know, preaching something that could have been said in 10 minutes, I said in 20 minutes, I have now learned how to compact my messages and compact my sermons. Another thing is, I'm also learning how not to preach only to the church. Not only to the church. An effective preacher must be able to preach not just to his congregation, but preach to people who are outside the church, who do not think like your church. And when you look at the story of the prodigal son, for instance, when Jesus said, a certain man had two sons, one was a rebel, which parents, you don't need to be a Christian to understand that a teenager can be rebellious. You know, it's not only Christians who will understand that. When it talks about the parable of the talents, which businessman will not understand that? A certain man gave his servants, you know, goods and went on a far journey, and when he came back, he expected to get returns. When it told the story about the 5 virgins, or the 10 virgins, come on. Every mother who has a daughter will know that story, will understand that story. Every girl who is single and expectant will understand that story. It's not only the church. So part of the burden for us is to preach messages that are not only church-centric, that not only the church people will understand, and we don't use only church language, and even church titles. You know, titles like, the Holy Ghost came down, you know, for a message, particularly you put that on a flyer, thy kingdom come, you put that on a flyer and you're distributing it. The only people who will understand that kingdom come are church people. You know, the people who don't go to church will not understand that kingdom come. So you've got to change the way some of these things are done. You know, you've got to change the way some of these things are done. And confidentiality, you cannot tell stories anyhow anymore on the pulpit. You cannot. You know, because you are telling these stories, not only is the fact that people are cross-checking, these things are stored.
Yes.
One day or the other, somebody is going to, you know, just going to put it out there and say, this is what you said. So now when I crack jokes in the pulpit, and I say, for instance, hey, if you don't come to church, you will see me in your dreams. I will say, that is a joke, oh, that is a joke. So that somebody does not go and say, that's all they will put and say, Pastor Joe said that you see him in your dreams. You know, so one has to be careful about that.
I'm so sorry. There's somebody that got unmuted. I don't know how that happened. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Joe. I have someone that asked a question here, so I'm just going to segue into questions. And I have a question for Pastor Ayo Daniels also after this one. Somebody said, thank you for sharing, sir. Are there some ready online church apps that you can recommend, or is it better to develop from scratch?
Doc, please, before Pastor answer that question, I need to add one additional question. So okay, what are the various? One additional question closely related to that. What are the various platforms can you recommend for churches who want to go online? I know to a large extent we have the YouTube, the Instagram, some other platform. Can you just please recommend the easiest platform for any church who wants to get online that they can easily get into at this time?
Okay. I think it depends on the church. In the US here, what YouTube is very strong. You know, the YouTube is a platform that works, that allows for a lot of dissemination here in the US. I hear that in Nigeria, Facebook is very effective. You know, like I said, I was talking to Pastor Sam the other day. He says that you spend 10 cents per person on Facebook. That Facebook is very effective in Nigeria. What I would suggest is use as many platforms as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Use YouTube, use Facebook, use Instagram, use as many platforms as possible. Right now, in my own local church, I'm setting up a team. This is something that we are really working on. I'm getting all the IT professionals and bringing them together. We want to study the various platforms that we can use. I'm going to deploy all the platforms so that wherever you go, you see Atlanta. If it's Facebook, you will see us there. If it's Instagram, you will see us there. If it is another gram, you will see us wherever you are. You know, Modakeke book, you will see us there. So that's use all the platforms. Right now, I can't think of any church platform.
I said massive campaign.
Massive campaign. Right now, I can't think of any platform that we can use, any app, any specific church app. But these are the platforms that have already been put there. And one other thing I would say for those of you who are in Nigeria, advertise. Use these platforms to advertise, particularly like Facebook. Facebook, you know, you don't have to pay too much to advertise in Facebook. Put the money there and advertise your church. You know, Coca-Cola is still advertising every day. And they call that saturation. There's something they call saturation something. Anywhere you go in the world, you'll find a post office and you find Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola has been there long before I was born. Why do they still advertise? Because when you go to any place, you reach out, what do you want to pick? You want to pick a Coke. So advertise your church, advertise, use the various platforms and advertise. Do everything that you can do to advertise your church online.
Thank you so much. I also want to say that one of the things we would do for that person that asked that question is that we might just, I know that there might be some online app for giving and all of that. We would check, and if we find anything on the various pastors platform that we have, we will also send any information that we get. Pastor Ayo, you said something, and I just, before we round up, I want to ask you, thank you, Pastor Joe. I still have one last question for you before you go. But Pastor Ayo, you said something to me the last time you spoke. You said, you know, this online church has allowed you to actually to be more mindful of your wellness. You know, do you just want to speak to that a bit and how the experience has been for you?
Sorry, I missed that.
Hello?
I missed the question. You got frozen.
I said you had shared during one of our conversations that the online platform, doing online church, has actually helped you to focus on your wellness. You know, and to evaluate quite a number of things. And you want to just, you know, for 1 minute, just tell us how this experience has been for you. What are you now doing differently, and what do you plan to do differently when you finally go back to normal, well, the new normal?
If you ask me, I don't want to go back. Honestly, I'm enjoying myself at this time. I'm perfectly in sync with what Dr. shared today. We are on the same page about online church. I have more time to pray, more time to study, more time to prioritize on what is important. And I think for us, number one thing that I have done, which Doctor said earlier on, is that mental adjustment. That you are not going to face any crowd anymore. It's just you are speaking to a camera. And I got used to it over the weeks and over the months, and it has been a very pleasant experiences. We have also introduced many of the things that he mentioned, and we're able to get our people at the various strata and platforms to get them engaged. And as I speak with you, each time we have any of those online programs, people join from all over Africa, North America, South America. And that has also put a check on me. When I'm speaking, I'm not speaking to people in Lagos. So I'm deliberate, I'm conscious about it. But generally, I'm having the best of time. I say to our church members, even if we don't resume physically, which I know immediately after the post-COVID and all the things, it's going to be pretty difficult to get people back into church physically, because people are afraid and they are still afraid. But I'm having the best of time. Finances, it has reduced, no doubt about it, but our bills are still being paid. So that's just the best moment that we have in our heads.
Praise the Lord. Well, thank you so much. Once again, we thank God for what the Lord is doing. Like I had said, I believe, and this is not just for pastors alone, I also said head of ministries, it's the same thing, that God uses every situation, that in the time of famine, God uses all these situations to advance his church. And so instead of us fighting the government, instead of us fighting, we should bunker in and say, Lord, what are you saying? When the church was persecuted in the book of Acts, it was as a result of that the gospel spread. If not, they were all together in Jerusalem, and just staying there. But the killing of Stephen, and the persecution expanded the church. And so I think one of the things that we need to be asking is how, what do you want to do with this, oh Lord? How do you want the church, instead of being localized, how do you want the church to take over, and then reach out to this new generation that the church has been losing so much, this new generation, reaching out to them, and God will help us. Pastor Joe, finally, what last thing do you have to say? Is there something in your heart that I have not asked you that you want to say to pastors concerning this new normal and going forward?
Please unmute yourself, Doctor. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, this is what I will say, that these are very exciting times. It's laced with a lot of unpredictability because we have never walked this way before. But when you look at the fact that Jesus said that in the last days, there will be pestilence, there will be pandemics, you know that this is the direction of the world. This is not going to be the last pandemic. There will be other pandemics. So what I would do is, and what I am doing is, we are in a lot of praying and asking God for guidance about what to do and how to do it. Because like we have said repeatedly, the world will never be the same again. So it is our burden and our responsibility to find out how do we navigate ourselves into the future in the light of the present normal. So it's our burden, it's our responsibility. It's our burden to find out. So we need to do what we need to do. We need to pray, we need to study, we need to ask questions. So for me, it's a journey into the future, the unknown future, but it's an exciting journey because that is where God is leading his people so that we can actually take over the world. So that's all I can say right now.
Wonderful.
Doctor, can I just say one more thing?
Please go ahead.
Please, just to encourage our fellow pastors here in Nigeria or wherever people are, please don't think that online ministry, it's a very expensive thing to set up. It may look like the initial cost is a bit high, but it's worth it. The advertisement on it is cheaper, and then you have wider range. So if you can just talk to people who are tech savvy, they'll be able to advise. But I'm sure that is cheap than the average program that we put together, printing flyers and all that. So if you can just get people with the right advice, we can get online, and it will spread our ministry much more than we have even now. And the gospel will be preached, and then Jesus will be glorified in all that we do. Thank you very much.
God bless you. I am so excited about this. I know that people have been sending me messages.
The hardest heart and speak life into my soul. And who can spin the world around search the depths of me and love me to the core. And who controls the world I see and walks me through it